She hit the floor, and the whole terminal stopped breathing. The canvas bag skidded ahead of her and split open, sending documents sliding across the polished tiles in every direction. An old passport spun and landed face-up near a child's stroller. A businessman stumbled backward into the person behind him. Two security officers came running from opposite ends of the corridor, radios already crackling. A woman somewhere in the crowd pressed her hand to her mouth. A news crew filming a routine feature on airport congestion swung their camera around on pure instinct. The cameraman pushed through the gathering crowd and zoomed in just before security formed a barrier. 3 seconds of footage. Her face, pale and still, turned slightly upward. One hand open against the cold tile as though she had finally, after carrying something too heavy for too long, allowed herself to let go. Nobody in that terminal knew her name. Nobody knew what was inside those scattered documents. Nobody knew that this woman had spent 5 years running from a truth so dangerous she had chosen sickness, exile, and silence rather than let it reach the wrong hands. But the camera captured everything, and by the time the evening news cycled through in Seoul, that 3-second image had already been broadcast 17 times. Kang Jun-hyuk was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse on the 42nd floor, a glass of aged whiskey untouched in his hand, the city burning below him in cold gold and white light. He had a board meeting at 7 in the morning, a merger document that needed his signature before midnight. The relentless machinery of an empire that consumed time and produced power, grinding forward the way it always did, requiring nothing from him except his complete and permanent attention. The television was on because silence had become something he could no longer comfortably inhabit. He had not always needed noise to fill a room. That was before. He was not watching the screen when the footage appeared. He was looking at the city, thinking about nothing in particular, which was the closest he came to rest these days. The anchor's voice was flat and professional. Routine collapse at an international terminal. Traveler in critical condition. Footage obtained by a regional crew on assignment. Nothing in the tone suggested he should turn around. Something made him turn anyway. He looked at the screen for 1 full second before his body responded. The glass left his fingers before his mind had caught up to why. It hit the marble floor and shattered. He did not look down. His eyes were locked on that face, the particular architecture of those cheekbones, the shape of that brow, the way her hand had fallen open against the tile with a specific and unmistakable exhaustion that reached through the screen and grabbed something deep in his chest and squeezed. He stopped breathing. Adanna. One word, almost no sound, the name of something he had spent 5 years training himself to bury. His assistant appeared at the doorway, drawn by the breaking glass. One look at Jun-hyuk's face stopped the man completely. "Get the jet ready," Jun-hyuk said. His voice was controlled, but his hands were not. "Tonight, right now." "Sir, where?" "I said now." He was already moving. The hospital was nothing like the private facilities Jun-hyuk typically moved through. Fluorescent corridors, linoleum floors worn smooth by years of crisis. The particular institutional smell of a place that has long since run out of the luxury of reacting to emergency. A nurse tried to redirect him at the entrance to the critical care wing. His security team managed the obstacle professionally and without drama, and he walked those corridors like a man, approaching a verdict that had been waiting 5 years to be read aloud. The doctor was young and visibly unsettled by the controlled intensity coming off the group that had descended on his ward at this hour. He opened with the most important fact first. "She's stable." Jun-hyuk's jaw tightened at the word stable, as though it were nowhere near sufficient. "Tell me everything, don't soften it." The doctor exhaled. "She has a serious autoimmune condition that has been progressing for at minimum 3 years, possibly longer. In its early stages, with consistent treatment, proper rest, adequate nutrition, manageable. People live full lives with this condition under proper care." A pause that carried real weight. She had none of those things. Her body shows the accumulated effect of years of sustained stress, malnutrition, and complete absence of medical intervention. What happened today in that terminal was not a sudden event. It was the end of a very long road that her body simply could not continue traveling. Jun Hyuk stared at the closed door of room 14. Something was happening behind his eyes that he was working hard to keep off his face. She knew she was sick, he said, not a question, a reckoning with himself. Someone living with this condition for this long would have been aware for years that something was seriously wrong. Yes. And she kept moving anyway. The doctor said nothing because there was nothing clinical left to add. Jun Hyuk pushed the door open. She looked small in the bed. That was the first thing that quietly broke him, how small she looked. He had carried a specific image of Adanna in his memory for 5 years, built entirely from the last night he saw her. That image was fire and composure, and a stillness so complete it had read in his bitterest moments as contempt. That version of Adanna had stood across from him, while he said things he could never retract, and had looked at him steadily, without flinching, without begging, without explaining herself at all. He had read that silence as guilt for 5 years. He was beginning, standing in the doorway of a hospital room in a country far from home, to understand it had been something else entirely. The hospital staff had sealed her belongings in a bag and left it on the bedside table. Jun Hyuk sat down beside her bed and opened it slowly. Medical reports first. Pages of them, spanning clinics in 4 countries, 3 languages, years of a condition tracked in fragmented visits by doctors who never had the full picture because she never stayed in one place long enough to give it to them. Each clinic stamp was a city. Each city was another year spent moving alone. Then the photograph. Their wedding day. She was laughing at something just off camera, head tilted back, completely unguarded. And he was not looking at the photographer. He was watching her laugh, with an expression on his face that a man in his position rarely allows anyone to see, undefended, certain, completely present to her. Whoever had taken the picture had caught that exact moment without either of them knowing. He set it down, face up. He could not turn it over. Then he found the letters. 7 of them. Handwritten on whatever paper she had access to across the years, hotel stationery, a clinic appointment sheet, paper so worn the creases had nearly separated into tears. Each one was sealed. Each one was addressed to him by name. Not one had ever been sent. He opened the first one with hands that were not entirely steady. Jun Hyuk, if you are reading this, then something has gone wrong with my plan to disappear quietly. So I suppose you are owed the truth, even now, even like this. He read through the night. The story assembled itself across 7 letters like a case file, written in grief, and something fiercer than grief. Written in the controlled, precise hand of a woman who had decided that if the truth ever reached him, it would reach him completely and without distortion. 5 years ago, Adanna had found something buried inside the financial architecture of his company. A shadow structure, accounts feeding quietly into arrangements that had been designed to be invisible, designed specifically to surface only at the right moment, with the right person positioned to inherit the wreckage. She had begun pulling threads carefully, privately, telling no one. The closer she got, the more complete the picture became. And then someone reached her first. The warning had not come as a physical threat. It had come as a demonstration. Fabricated documents constructed with surgical precision that would implicate Jun Hyuk as the architect of everything she had uncovered. Criminal liability, regulatory destruction. Not just the company dismantled, him, specifically, exposed and buried beneath it. The message was delivered once, clearly. Continue, and this goes public with his name on every page. She had one move available that the person behind this had not fully accounted for. Disappear. Remove herself from the board entirely. Without her investigation, the threat lost its mechanism. Without her presence, the leverage collapsed. She could not yet prove what she knew. She needed more time, more safety, more access than she had, so she did the only thing that protected him immediately and completely. She manufactured a reason for him to believe she had betrayed him. She walked into his worst accusation and did not defend herself, because defending herself would have required telling him the truth, and telling him the truth would have brought her back into range. She left so that the trap had no trigger. She chose exile and silence, and the long deterioration of a body that could not sustain 5 years of that kind of running, rather than risk the destruction of the man she had committed herself to. The last letter was the shortest. It said only, "I don't know if you will ever read this, but I need you to know that not one day passed when I stopped believing in you. Not one. Whatever you built without me, I already know it is extraordinary. I am sorry I couldn't stay. I am sorry I couldn't explain. I hope the silence felt like abandonment and not like what it actually was, because what it actually was love, the most expensive kind." Jun Hyuk sat in the pale gray light of early morning with 7 letters on his lap, and 5 years of iron certainty dissolving around him. He had been so sure. That was the part that hollowed him out now, the completeness of his certainty. He had looked at the woman who had chosen him, repeatedly and at tremendous cost, and he had decided with total conviction that she was a traitor. Someone had read him with perfect accuracy. Someone had known that if the evidence appeared convincing enough, Jun Hyuk's pride would seal the verdict before any doubt could form. He needed to know who. But first, before we go any further into this story, I want to take a moment and step outside it. To everyone watching right now, everyone who has stayed with Adanna through the collapse, through the hospital, through those 7 letters that were never sent, I see you. I know the kind of person who connects with a story like this one. You understand that real love is not always visible, that sacrifice doesn't always announce itself, that some of the most faithful people in your life have been quietly absorbing pain on your behalf that you may never fully know about. You recognize that because you have probably done something similar for someone you love. That is the Velvet Empire family. And before we continue, I want to speak something directly over your life. May your body be strong and your health be protected today and in every season ahead. May any illness forming quietly in the background of your life be stopped before it takes root. May your home be a place of genuine peace, not the kind that requires performance, but the deep kind, the kind that lets you exhale completely when you walk through your own door at the end of a hard day. May your children and your grandchildren be covered in favor and protection that goes ahead of them into every room they enter. May doors open for them that stayed closed for you, and may they never have to fight as hard as you did simply to be seen and valued. May your finances hold steady through uncertain seasons, and may unexpected provision find its way to you in forms you didn't plan for and cannot fully explain. May you have the wisdom to recognize the right decision before the wrong one becomes too costly to recover from. May every silent burden you have been carrying alone, the grief no one sees, the worry you manage privately, the exhaustion you hide behind competence, begin to lift. You were never designed to carry all of it. And may you live long, may your later years be your richest and most joyful, and may you finish every single thing you were placed on this earth to accomplish. That is the Velvet Empire blessing, and it belongs to every one of you watching right now. If this touched you, please like this video. It takes 1 second and it means more than you know. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, because subscribing is genuinely the only way this page can keep running and keep bringing you stories that matter. And drop the word Amen in the comments below so I know this blessing reached you. You are not just viewers here. You are family. Now, back to Jun Hyuk, because the man he was about to find had been standing at his right hand for 10 years. He brought in 2 investigators, men who answered only to him, whose careers had been built on discretion, and who had never once given him a reason to question their loyalty. He handed them everything Adanna had documented across those 7 letters: dates, account numbers, transaction patterns, names of intermediaries she had identified before she was forced to run. Within 48 hours, what had been fragments became a structure. and the structure had one name at its center: Kang Min-seok, his cousin, his oldest ally, the man who had stood beside him at the company's founding and said they would build something the world hadn't seen before. The man who had given a toast at his wedding with genuine warmth in his face and had sat across from him through 10 years of boardroom wars, offering counsel that always sounded like loyalty and always served a hidden purpose. Jun Hyuk read the investigator's full report without moving. When he finished, he read it again. Then he set it down and sat very still in the way of someone who feels something too large for ordinary expression and has trained himself over a lifetime to contain it. Min-seok had not simply been stealing. He had been conducting a slow and patient takeover, bleeding the company in increments too small to trigger internal audits, building a shadow structure of subsidiaries and partnerships that funneled gradually toward his own control, positioning himself to step into ownership of what would appear to be a company that had collapsed naturally. A seizure disguised as a death. Years of meticulous work. The kind of plan that only works if the primary obstacle is removed cleanly and permanently. 5 years ago, Adanna had gotten close enough to the edge of it that exposure had become a real risk. Min-seok had made a precise calculation. Threatening her directly carried its own dangers, but threatening her through Jun Hyuk, through her love for Jun Hyuk, was clean and nearly invisible. It required only that she love her husband more than she feared her own unraveling. He had bet on her love. He had been right. And for 5 years he had operated in complete safety, shielded by the silence of the one person who could have destroyed him. Because that person was too busy protecting the man she should have been able to come home to. Jun Hyuk sent Min-seok one message, 4 words. "My office tomorrow morning." Min-seok arrived with the comfortable confidence of a man who has spent years believing he is untouchable. He walked in the way he always walked into rooms, with the ease of someone who considers himself the most significant person, present regardless of the circumstance. He settled into the chair across from Jun Hyuk's desk and offered the practiced, warm smile of a man who had been performing loyalty so long he had almost forgotten it was a performance. "You wanted to see me. Is this about the Incheon deal? Because I already told the legal team." "I found the accounts," Jun Hyuk said. Silence. Min-seok's face did not change immediately. He was skilled, exceptionally skilled. The smile faded at precisely the pace of a man receiving unexpected information, rather than a man receiving the sentence he had always known was eventually coming. He tilted his head slightly. "What accounts?" "All of them." Jun Hyuk opened the folder and slid it across the desk. "The shell structure registered 6 years ago, the routing through the Cayman subsidiary, the communications with the intermediary you used to fabricate evidence against my wife." He paused. Let each word land where it needed to land. All of it, documented, verified, already in the hands of 3 separate legal authorities. Min-seok looked at the folder. He did not touch it. The room held its breath. Then something in Min-seok's face changed. Not into panic, into something colder, more deliberate. The performance fell away completely, and what remained underneath was not the cousin or the advisor or the ally. It was the face of someone who had been calculating for a decade and was now making one final calculation. "You were always too sentimental for what this company needed to become," Min-seok said quietly. "You built something extraordinary, and then you let emotion compromise every major decision you made. I was protecting the long-term future. You were stealing it. I was preserving it." His voice was steady, certain, the voice of a man who had rehearsed his justification for so long it had taken on the texture of conviction. "You would have lost everything within a decade. I was positioning the company for the next 30 years. By destroying my marriage." Something shifted fractionally in Min-seok's expression, just fractionally. "Your marriage was a vulnerability. I reduced the exposure." The temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. Jun Hyuk stood slowly. He had not raised his voice once. He had not moved aggressively. He had not needed to. The absolute stillness of a man who holds every card and knows it is far more frightening than anything louder would have been. "The board convenes in 90 minutes, he said. "This conversation was recorded from the moment you sat down. Your access cards were deactivated 12 minutes ago. Your stake in this company is frozen pending criminal investigation across 3 jurisdictions. And every person who assisted you has already been contacted by investigators who have been working this case since yesterday morning." He held Min Seok's gaze without blinking. "You had 10 years of my complete trust. You used it to dismantle my life from the inside. I hope whatever you thought you were building was worth what it is going to cost you." Min Seok stood, his composure held barely, like a structure that has cracked through every wall but has not yet registered its own collapse. He straightened his jacket. He looked at Jun Hyuk with an expression that contained, somewhere underneath the arrogance and the calculation, a flicker of something that might have been, in a different life, genuine regret. Then he walked out. The door clicked shut. Jun Hyuk stood alone in the silence of the office he had built from nothing. He let out one slow breath. Then he reached for his phone and called the hospital. She was awake. She had been awake for 3 days, recovering in the careful incremental way of someone whose body had been through a sustained war, and was only now being given permission to rest properly. When he walked into room 14, she was sitting up, thinner than he had ever seen her, but with eyes that were completely present, sharp, attentive, reading the room and reading him in the first second with the accuracy that had always, in quieter moments, made him feel both known and exposed. He sat down. She studied his face. "It's done," she said before he could speak. "Yes." Something moved through her expression, a release of something she had been holding contracted for so long it had become structural. She exhaled slowly. Then she looked at him directly and said, "Was it Min Seok?" Not a question. She had known. She had probably known for years and carried it alone. "Yes," he said. She nodded once. "I got within 2 weeks of being able to prove it. He moved faster than I expected." "Why didn't you find a way to tell me?" His voice carried no accusation, only the genuine weight of a man trying to understand the distance between what happened and what could have happened differently. Even through someone else, even anonymously, there had to have been a way. Adanna looked at him for a long moment before she answered. "Because you would have come for me," she said simply. "The moment you came for me, he had everything he needed. The evidence he had fabricated was convincing, Jun Hyuk. Convincing enough that your own legal team would have hesitated. He needed only for you to appear to be defending a wife who had been positioned as guilty, and the entire narrative buried you alongside me." She held his gaze steadily. "The only version of this story that kept you safe was the one where I was the villain and you believed it completely. And I needed you to believe it completely, which meant I could not give you any reason to doubt it." The silence that followed that was the heaviest silence of the night. "I believed it," he said, "without hesitation. I looked at everything we had built together and I chose certainty over you." His jaw tightened. "That is not something I can explain away." "No," she said, "it isn't." The honesty of that sat between them without drama and without apology. No easy absolution. No collapse into tearful reconciliation that erased the years between them. Just 2 people sitting inside the full truth of what had happened, for the first time together. He reached across slowly and covered her hand with his. She looked down at their hands, then back up at him, and the expression on her face was exhausted and complicated and real, and somewhere deep inside it, underneath 5 years of weight and distance and survival, something older than all of it still present, still holding, still, against every reasonable expectation, intact. She did not pull her hand away. Months passed. The treatment protocol was demanding, and Adanna was, as her medical team quickly discovered, a deeply uncooperative patient in all the ways that actually accelerate recovery, questioning every decision, challenging discharge timelines, arguing with specialists about medication adjustments, with the focused energy of someone who had been entirely responsible for their own survival for too long to easily surrender authority over it. Her doctors found her exhausting. She was ahead of schedule within 6 weeks. Jun Hyuk came every day he was in the country. Sometimes he worked from the chair beside her bed, documents spread across his lap, and she would read over his shoulder without being invited and point out the precise location of errors in his reasoning with a directness that made his staff deeply uncomfortable and made him feel, for the first time in 5 years, something that resembled peace. They did not rush. They had spent too long moving fast in the wrong direction. There was no urgency now except the honest kind, the kind that comes from finally being present to something real. Min Seok's proceedings moved through 3 jurisdictions. The charges were significant and the evidence comprehensive. Adanna's 5 years of careful, solitary documentation, assembled while sick, while moving, while surviving on margins that should not have sustained that kind of work, proved more thorough than even Jun Hyuk's investigators had anticipated. The prosecutors noted it formally. He told her. She said quietly, looking out the hospital window, "I had a reason to be thorough." On the morning they walked back through the airport together, the light felt different. That was the first thing Jun Hyuk registered, the same terminal, the same gate numbers, the same ceiling and the same particular quality of crowd noise. But something about standing here beside her rather than arriving alone changed everything about how the space felt. Adanna moved at a pace that was unhurried and deliberate. Her health had come back gradually, and then all at once in the way these things happen, weeks of slow, measurable progress, and then one morning she had simply been herself again, fully returned, the particular quality of attention she brought to the world completely restored. She stopped near Gate 7B, looked down at the floor, a specific spot. Jun Hyuk stopped beside her and let her be quiet. "I used to think about what it would mean to never finish this," she said, not with grief, with the calm reflection of someone standing safely on the other side of something. Not death exactly, just the story stopping before it resolved, before any of it was allowed to matter. He looked at her profile. It mattered. She turned to face him. "Did it?" "You protected something that deserved protecting," he said carefully. "Even when the thing you were protecting wasn't making it easy to love, even when it cost you everything it cost you." He held her gaze. "That will matter for the rest of my life." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then the corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile yet, but the unmistakable direction of one. He reached out and took her hand. She let him. They walked forward together through Gate 7B, past the place where she had fallen, past the end of the old story, into the open length of the terminal and whatever came after it. No secrets between them anymore. No silence that cost anything. No distance that either of them had to maintain to keep the other one safe. He held her hand and kept walking. And after a moment, quietly, without stopping, he said, "You spent years protecting me. Now I will spend the rest of my life protecting you." She walked beside him and thought about 7 letters she had written and sealed and never sent. She thought about 5 years of keeping his name inside her like something that still belonged to her even when nothing else did. She thought about every city and every clinic and every morning she had woken up and chosen, in silence and without recognition, to keep him safe from a distance. Then she tightened her hand around his. And that was all the answer either of them needed. Before we close this story, drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Are you on Adanna's side? Did Jun Hyuk earn his way back, or did he still have further to go? Tell me what you think about Min Seok, because this family always has something to say and I want to read every single comment. If you have not subscribed to Velvet Empire Stories yet, do it right now. Not as a favor to us, as a gift to yourself. Because we have stories on this channel that will stay with you long after you finish watching, and your subscription is the only thing that keeps this family alive and this channel running. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear a story about love that survives the impossible, and then go explore more Velvet Empire stories. Every single one was made for you. You are the Velvet Empire family, and you belong here. Some loves collapse under the weight of betrayal and never recover, but the ones built from something deeper than happiness, built from choice, made again and again in the dark. With no guarantee of return, those loves have a different kind of endurance. They look like 7 unsent letters. They look like a woman who kept moving through 4 countries and 6 years of illness because she had decided, quietly and without ceremony, that his safety was worth more than her own comfort. They look like a man who finally chose truth over pride and walked back into the place where he almost lost everything, this time holding on. The story of Adanna and Jun Hyuk is closed. But somewhere in the next story, another love is already being tested. And you will not want to miss what happens next.